Get a life, nerd.
Hi, I'm Alkali. If you bought this pattern on Etsy, we are assembling it today. So if you did, thank you for purchasing my pattern. I know it can be difficult. It's an intermediate level pattern. So I want to walk you through all of the steps. First off, if you're assembling this pattern, you're going to want to cut out all the pieces first. Follow the description that I put on the patterns. It says how to cut them, the angles of how to cut them. The hardest part is going to be getting all the glue on these finger-like pieces without them touching each other. And if you've already made it past this part, then you understand what it is I'm talking about. So as you can see, you guys, I just wanted to explain, if you've never, ever used contact cement, you have to know that you have to let it completely dry first before you put it together. So those of you who bought my pattern and are assembling my pattern and you're having a hard time with seams sticking, or you know, this is a question I've got. I've had a lot of messages on this pattern because a lot of people have bought it. So thank you for buying my pattern. And I made it open-ended so people can ask me questions and then message me on Etsy. And thankfully a lot of people are taking advantage of that. But I had one gal say she was really having a hard time getting her seams to stick together. And I think that she wasn't letting the contact cement dry. So that's you gotta let it dry. So or cure. So I have contact cement on both of these pieces. This piece should be cured now, but we're gonna wait just a few more seconds. Okay, you guys, this is the order that you have to do it. If you want your Lady Loki corset to be successful, you need to do this part first. All right, so let's get this seam together. I labeled this. This says L in the corner, so I know it's left, which means I want the bust to pop out this way. And I have a seam for getting this more, trick for getting this more curvy too. And oh, you can see this is not ready. See how it's kind of really shiny? It's actually not good. I'll try another piece. You can kind of get some air in there, or you can hit it with your heat a little bit if you want, but I try not to do that very much. There's actually just too much glue, so I'm just gonna wipe a little bit off. I'll check the other seams. It's easier to do outsides, the two outsides first, and then do the inside one last. So I'm just gonna come here, and this is gonna pop up this way, but I'm gonna put it together kind of inverted first. So meaning, let me get this up here on the camera for you guys. I'm gonna put these seams together. And see how I'm a little bit further on this one? You want to push it up and make sure that the seams line so you have a nice flush edge. Even if you have to squish or move the foam, you can squish or move it. And we'll talk about that a lot today, squishing and moving foam. All right, so if I turn this upside down, you'll see that it's not quite hooked together yet on the back. That's fine. That's gonna all come together when we push it outwards. So this is seam 1. We got it. It looks good. Coming up here, we have seam number 2. And then you can see it's gonna look like one side is maybe a millimeter longer. That's okay. We're just gonna push it in. We wanna make sure these ends line up together and we have a nice flush piece. And like I said, you can push and manipulate the foam in order to get it to do that. So make sure you do that. All right, so again, not quite hooked together on the back. That's okay, just wait. Okay, so now we're coming in with this middle one. Coming in. Hooking this together. I'll do the other one much faster. Now you can see that this looks kind of like it's inverted, right? Like this looks like it should go this way. Well, this is the left side, so it needs to pop outwards. So we're gonna do that now. So this is inside out. So I'm gonna push these seams together towards the back. And I promise doing your seams inverted first and hooking the outside piece will make everything turn out real nice. All right, so we have bust panel number 1. And what I like to do is I like to get this on the table, like to use my knuckles, you gotta really put some work into it. And I'm gonna push these seams together. And I'm just gonna make sure everything's real nice. We don't want any separation. And it's okay if we do. By the way, if you have really ugly seams, they're splitting, it's gross, don't worry too much because this all gets covered. That's the beauty of this design and why it works so well. And I know I say the pattern's intermediate, and it is intermediate. This is a difficult pattern, and you'll see why when we get to the overlay panels. However, it's also a very forgiving pattern, meaning all of your seams get covered right? So you don't have to worry about having pretty seams. So if you're a brand new cosplayer, you're a brand new foam smith, don't worry. You can cover the ugly seams and we'll make it pretty. If your panels aren't lining up great when you're putting your panels on, that's fine. You can put them on really however you want. Like, you don't have to have the most perfect Lady Loki seams like going in at this perfect chevron. Put them on how you want to. Nobody's gonna care. You're gonna look like Lady Loki no matter what. All right, so back to our contact cement. I am in a well-ventilated area. I have a window open. So the thing about contact cement is you're probably gonna wanna wear a respirator or some sort of mask that filters out chemical smell as opposed to filtering out dust. Because there's masks that filter out dust, and then there's masks that filter out like chemicals. So you want to have a respirator if you are in a non-ventilated area. I have this door open and I have this window open. You guys are gonna have a hard time hearing me speak if I put the respirator on. So I'm gonna go ahead and skip that today just for the sake of the YouTube video. But I just want you to know, if I was on my own and was not filming, I would definitely put a respirator on. So just know that, you guys. Contact cement is no joke. This is probably cured now. So let's put this together. All right, so same as before. I like to connect, when I talk about outer edges, I just mean that I'm not taking these together and just boop, going flat piece to piece. I like to go on the outer seam first. See these little registration marks? You want them to touch. As I was putting my pattern together the other day, I noticed some of my registration marks are weird or wonky or don't actually have anywhere to go to. So if you're building the pattern and you're like, oh, there's a random mark here. It's a random mark, don't worry about it. You can tell where stuff goes, right? Sorry. I was getting extra like excited about putting registration marks in. I think I put a couple extra on there that don't go anywhere. All right, so we got the pieces together all nice. If I turn this inside out, you're gonna see a couple gaps like before. We just press them together. Make sure we get all those nice and tight. So this is the inside. This is the outside. Sometimes it can be tough to like push together a seam that's got a slight gap. So I'm just gonna put my fingers on both sides of this and kind of lightly press to the middle. You always kind of want to invert seams. So I'm pressing on this and I'm kind of denting in the corset, opposite of how it should go. If you want a seam to press together well, go opposite of how it should go. So I'm kind of pushing this inward, and that's making a beautiful, beautiful seam. That looks great. The nice thing about this pattern is that this whole center seam gets covered. So you don't have to worry about the center seam at all. If you have any problems with the center seam, just know that it's gonna 100% be covered by all of your pieces. So don't worry. All right, so now here's the trick to get a nice smooth bust. I do wanna say, if you're watching this video and if you're making this corset based off my Etsy patterns, this part you don't actually have to do. Because all your panels are gonna cover this anyway, it's gonna make it look nice and smooth. However, if you weren't great at putting your seams together and they are really pointy, you might see those points pop through in your panels. So one thing that I would recommend, just to be safe, is to smooth out these, which is what we're gonna do right now. So there's two ways to do this. First off, we're gonna heat it. This is just a regular heat gun. You get it in the painting aisle at the hardware store. Strange thing, if you buy a heat gun in the electric tools aisle, it'll almost always be double the cost, which is way odd. So if you buy a heat gun in the painting aisle, it is like half the cost. Nobody knows why. They are the same exact thing. So I'm heating this up really good, especially on the back side. You want to heat it up more on the backside and be more daring than the front, because this is where if you accidentally make a heat mark, it won't show. You're going to take your knuckles and you're going to push. And it's hot, so be careful. Like, I just noticed that's a bit too hot for me. And we're going to push and we're going to get this beautiful curve because the foam stretches. And now that it's all put together and I'm pushing from the inside, We're just taking our knuckles here, and I am really, you can see how much pressure I'm putting on this. My arm's almost shaking. So I'm gonna come in here and I'm gonna really curve. And no, this is not in the instructions for the pattern. And why? Because it's just a pattern. It's not a tutorial. Like, it's a partial tutorial and I give you instructions in the pattern, but if I had to write down every single step like this, it would be a book. So that's why we have YouTube. So anyway, I am curving this out really, really nice. And if this is all you did, you would have a gorgeous, beautiful bust. And you can see it's nice and curvy. There's hardly any like triangular points. It's a beautiful curve. All right, but if you want to be extra, which I know some of you like to be extra. All right, and I'm gonna very lightly, try to make it free, you can see it. Very lightly take off some of the edge of this seam. Do clear, long strokes. Don't go back and forth like this, because you'll cause yourself some issues. And so now what we're gonna do is we're gonna heat this up very lightly. We don't want these seams to come apart. If you heat up glue too much, they'll start to pull apart at the seams. Now watch with the heat gun, you're gonna see those lines start to go away. Because what happened was the surface of the foam was shiny where we'd heated it before, and then I roughed it up with the Dremel, and now the shine's coming back where we're heat sealing it again. All right, so simple as that. Turn it upside down. No need to heat the underside. We're just gonna press again on the back of these seams, rounding out that curve, pushing out towards the edges again. And this is putting pressure on this outer side here where we just heated, which is gonna make it nice and smooth. So see this? And it's a nice fit here. So now that we have this piece done, now we can connect the bottom piece. All right, so back to the glue. You just need one nice coat, like this, nice and thin. You don't need a ton of glue. The more glue you do, the worse it will be. Just a nice thin coat, which is actually why I really like these brushes. Now we go to the underside of this one. Make sure if you're doing your corset that you do it in the order that I do it. Assemble the bust first, get it nice and smooth. Then we're gonna hook the underbust seams, and then we'll do the side panel, and then we'll do the back panels. After you do all of those, you're gonna move on to the trim pieces. And I detail this in the pattern description. All right, these need to cure. This one's almost there. Let's talk about cure for a second. See how this is still kind of shiny right there? And see how it, ooh, that's a hot heat gun. See how it's dull over here? You're not getting any shine on it. That's what we want all across it. So as we pan across this, we can see just a slight bit of shine still right there, right? You don't want that. If you bought this pattern, you guys, this is an important moment, okay? Pay attention. This top piece is gonna look longer than this bottom piece. And you're gonna think, how do I get this to connect? Well, this is curved and this is straight. So I promise you, the length of this is still the length of this. Now, what you want to pay attention to is that you're not going to end up with a big chunk on the side. I've made several of these now, and sometimes if I don't start squishing the foam right, I'll get what looks like an inch at the end that I suddenly need to squish in real quick. So it's going to take a firm hand. Now, we're going to come together on this, and I'm almost pulling this bottom piece this way, okay? So as I'm squishing, I'm almost also kind of pulling it. So, and it's tough. See, I did it. It's tough sometimes to get this piece to go to this piece without this piece sticking to the back piece. And you'll notice you're gonna run into that. But just try to lift a piece of it up. And then if you keep one piece kind of up and curved up, it's not gonna happen to you. So there's your little trick. Now let's check. I'm checking right now to see how close I am. Right now I'm still about 1/4 inch too long, which means I need to start pressing together more. All right. This is the trickiest piece to put together because of the curves. But again, don't worry if you have a gap. you can fix it. All right, so if some of you, I'm gonna stop right here and show you this big, ugly, messy piece. Some of you are, and this is the inside, right? I like to work on the inside here. Some of you are at home making this and you're like, ah, crap, this pattern doesn't go together. Just know that this is normal, okay? Anyway, just squish it together. You need to be like, I hate the word manhandle, but like you need to like lady handle this freaking foam and you need to shove it together. Like if you're being all gentle about it, it's not gonna work. That's the first part. Now, we are going to move on to the side panels. All right, so back to the glue. We're gonna get a nice light coat. Remember, you don't want to put in a big heavy coat of glue. It's just a little bit. All right, these about ready. This side's still really wet. This is the left piece. This is the right panel. Right panel looks good. All right, we'll go with the right panel. So again, I work from the inside out a lot, you guys. Let me move this on camera better so you guys can see. I'm gonna push this in. Now remember how I said sometimes when you're hitting a big curve, it's easier just to hold this panel upwards? Because we have to get it in that curve. And here we're gonna see, I need to push this foam up to get it to match. Don't be afraid to like handle the foam. Like I need these two bottom seams to end up flush. So if I need to squish the foam up in here to get it to do that, then that's fine. I'm gonna squish up the foam. There we go. I got it to end perfectly flush at the bottom. That's what you want. I have a tiny gap here. This is common. Just squish it together. And now we have this. This is what it should look like at this point. So what's the next step here? You're gonna be inclined to want to, you know, put the straps on the top, right? To hold it all together, but you do that last. The straps that hold this all together happen last. So unfortunately, you're kind of stuck with this really awkward corset that you can't like hook together yet. We cannot even put the corset holes in it until we put the trim around it, because putting the trim around this bottom is going to show us where we need to make the holes. All right, so the next step that you want to do is to get some tape out. And if you don't have a mannequin, it's fine. You can still glue the pieces together and just, you know, stick a pillow in there. Grab one of your pillows and put the pillow on like inside this and then tape the straps up. So these need to go on first because these set your guidelines for how you do everything else. And I want to show you something here. So this piece is in the center and I'm wrapping around. This is important, okay? If you're making your own, know this is an important piece. I'm not lining up here with the back, okay? And that's just because of the way the foam curves, and as you're moving, you're kind of pulling the foam. So one thing we're gonna do really quick is give this a curve the way this is curving, because this is curved. So see how I just curved this really quick? See, this piece is straight where I just cut it out on the table. This piece I just curved around the edge of this. So you just take a straight edge, watch, and I'm just going to bend this over the straight edge and push real firm, okay? Same thing on the other side, and we're just kind of putting a curve into it. And I'm pulling down, I'm curving this. The reason it wasn't fitting is I hadn't curved it yet. Okay, you're trying to glue something straight on a curve, it's not gonna work. So now let's try. So now we put it there. Always measure before you glue. And now let's look. I'm a little bit closer, so we're still slightly off. So I'm just gonna give this a little bit of a tug. I'm gonna pull it just a little bit. And I'm just kind of, it's heating it up, you guys. This foam is cold. There we go. We're just kind of pulling this through. Now let's check again. Line that up at the center. Follow along this curved edge. Okay, we're still slightly, just a tiny, tiny bit here. All right, so now I'm gonna heat it up. These are just little tricks. Because, why does this happen? So the reason why this can happen on foam sometimes is because you pulled on it, or I pulled on it when I was stretching it to get it to match the other pieces. So because I did that, it got the foam slightly out of shape on the under piece. That's okay. This piece will still fit. It was made to fit. We just have to give it a little pull. All right. This is probably where some of you are seeing some mess ups. Like maybe this piece doesn't fit or this doesn't go here. It does go there. But this is an intermediate pattern. We're dealing with a lot of curves. We're dealing with heat-shaped foam. So you need to, you know, heat shape your foam. We're almost there. We're almost perfect. Almost there. Okay, so now I'm just gonna take, now that it's good, I'm just gonna mark where the glue line needs to go. Not that it matters that much. Glue goes all over this thing. I mean, this thing is covered in panels. So glue line is approximately there. So we're marking our glue line. This side's perfect. Of course this side's perfect. It means I could have also cut my center slightly off. So I'm gonna move my center line just a little bit. And where do we want to put that? Yeah, my center line is slightly off. That's why it was being weird. Okay, so we're gonna make our center. I must have moved the knife just a little bit when I did that. Right here. I'll draw that line real dark. Okay. So now we have our glue lines. This is actually for a client too. So I kind of have to do a good job. This is for one of my purchasers on Etsy. And I have 5 of these going right now. All in about this stage. So I like to do my stages all together. So if I'm working on 5 of these, I'm doing all of the bases first, all together. Then I'm doing, you know, all of the trim. Then I'm doing all of the C panels. But because we're doing this one for YouTube, I'm doing it out of order. Okay. This is the side that was being wonky earlier. So let's see if we can get this to line up just right. So I'm gonna stretch it. There we go. And I got it to line up. The way I stretched this, there's a slight overhang. I'll put my hand behind it so you can see of the gray foam. I'll just cut that off later. And I'm slightly overhanging off the edge here, which is perfect because I can just trim that off. If anything, you want it to be too big. Gorgeous. All right, so we've got our trim on. And now here's what the back looks like, right? Trim came right to the edges. All right, up we go, Genevieve. Now, if you want and you cut this top wonky, you can always just offset this higher, okay? I recommend not because it'll throw off the armpits, but you can a little bit. Like mine is slightly curved at the top, it looks like, where I might have like shifted my hand slightly or something when I was cutting the foam. So I'm gonna lift up my trim just a tiny bit to hide that. And now I'm gonna follow these armpit edges, edge to edge, okay? Even if you have to stretch the foam or move the foam, now keep in mind, I'm not worried about touching this side down. It's kind of lifting. We're only touching the top. So I don't look like so orange on this. The saturation's off on this camera. I have to fix that. Okay, so I'm following, I'm making sure this edge lines up with this edge, and then we'll squish the bottom edge down all nice. And then I don't have glue here, so I'll put some glue there. All right, so trim is on. Now here, I didn't put the glue up high enough, so I'm gonna let that cure while I do the other side. I have glue on the back of this tip here, I just don't have it right there. There. There we go. Now next side. We have the most important parts of our Sylvie done, because it's just so important that we get these on first. And then we want to get these ones, C1, 2, and 3 on, and then we want to get C4 on. And the reason why we want to get all these on first is because we need to try to wedge all the other pattern pieces in between. It is a metal Dremel with a round top, and this round top is, I don't know, crusty looking. It's hard to explain. It's like a rough textured surface. We're gonna use this. All right, and now we get this, which is this hammered look, okay? And now all of these can go on. Before we put them on, we want to make sure they're gonna come together nicely. Okay, so this piece, let me look at a photo, needs to stretch all the way to the corners. All right, so you can see here, I want this to come to this corner, and I want this to come to this corner. And it doesn't quite make it, probably because I dremeled the crap out of it. So, and it's not on a curve, so I'm just gonna stretch it. You just stretch your pieces, you guys. I promise you the patterns work. You just need to make them work sometimes. Here we go. Now it fits beautifully. Okay, so I'm gonna stick this corner to this corner, and I'm gonna smash that down, okay? Now I'm not gonna smash the middle down, not yet. I'm gonna wait till this is fully attached, and this touches the trim piece. Like this piece, there's no gap here. If you notice on this pattern, there's a whole bunch of tiny little 1 to 2 millimeter seams in between. There's a lot of corsets on Etsy right now, and some of them have giant gaps between the seams. It's not how it is on the show. The show looks like it's leather panels that are sewn on nicely with just, and they're almost flush. There's the tiniest little gap between them. So if you're doing this pattern right, you're gonna have tiny gaps between your panels, not giant gaps between your panels. You don't want it gappy. Gappy looks bad. Now we're gonna lift this up. We're not gluing this all on yet, okay? And I just want this corner. We're gonna stretch this corner. Oops, it lifted. I did not squish. There we go. I'm gonna stretch this corner to make sure that this piece goes into the corner. There we have it, and now I'll push the middle down, okay? This ensures, move this. This ensures that we are corner to corner, okay? That's when it's gonna look the prettiest. So the reason we put the trim first on is to make sure we have these pretty edges, right? Our edges lined up, our edges on, and now we're edge to edge. And if you do things edge to edge, you're gonna set yourself up to be successful with the rest of the pattern. So now I'm ready to put glue on this. All right, and then again, we work while something's curing, because if you just wait for glue to dry all day, it'll take forever to do this. So we put the glue on it, and now while that's happening, I'm gonna look at our reference photo, and this is gonna come down a little bit on the side here. And this needs to touch all the way to the top. So you can see it fits pretty dang good. I have a little gap here. Where you don't want big gaps is on these edges. So anywhere you have these trim edges, this is where our pattern should go pretty flush. If you look at my reference photo that I include and you zoom in, all your side angles should be just like this, okay? A tiny consistent gap. And then if we look at these gaps between panels, they're just a small gap. And what I tried to do was I tried to keep all these gap lines very consistent. And even when we come down here, super consistent. There's not big gaps in between these things. Like it doesn't go tiny gap, big gap. It's very, very consistent the whole way through. So just plan for that. And I know looking at my reference image that this piece needs to be flush with this piece right here. It's gonna come under here and it needs to be flush with this piece. Okay, looks like we're gonna be pretty good. This panel's working great. What I wanna do is, this is straight right now. It's going on a curve. I wanna pre-curve it. So we're gonna heat it. All right. And I'm just gonna use my hands and give it the tiniest little pull in the middle, okay? And tiniest little pull on the edges. Oof, I'm just using my thumb here. Put your thumb under it like this. Cover your hand and roll down. Other side, thumb under it, hand over it, roll down, okay? See how that's curved? How nice is that? That gives us a really, really good piece that's gonna fit so nicely right in here. So we want to get the glue started under here for the next piece. Again, you can kind of go crazy town on your glue because the whole corset's gonna get covered with it. Unlike other projects, we don't have to worry about keeping our glue in a specific area. Just takes so much of the worry out. Okay. And now we'll get this piece curing. This is the piece we just pre-curved to fit on our curved mannequin. Again, this is why I call this pattern intermediate. We're dealing with a lot of curved surfaces. This isn't a flat thing. We made a base out of flat 2-dimensional patterns. That's now a 3-dimensional pattern. So now we have to take our 2-dimensional panels that look like this and put them on a curved pattern. So you're gonna have to curve them first if you want them to go on nicely. All right, so on this one, I'm gonna peel this back just a little bit to create a nice little gap in here. I'm gonna put that in the center and I'm gonna squish it in. All right, that looks so good. Slightly bigger gap on the left than on the right, but doesn't matter. Not gonna be perfect. I don't know how far I can stretch this, not very far. But you can see there's tiny little gaps in the panels. It's what we want. We don't want big old gaps, just little ones. Okay, so now we have the tricky part of putting C3 on. Keep in mind, I need to match these corners. I want it to go up pretty flush to the edge of the corset. Now I'm going to stretch this, try to get the point to line up in the middle. And to get this to be flush with this edge, looks like I'm going to have to press in the foam ever so slightly. Okay, next we need to put C4 down here. This corset, this point, and this centerpiece are straight. And in theory, that's going to be the center line on C4. All right, and if you've done all of that, now you're prepared to put the rest of the panels on. And this is where it gets difficult. This is the hardest part. I probably made this all sound difficult too, but I promise it's just to teach you that these are all your essential pieces, okay? If you get these 4 pieces on, plus the trim, the rest of this will go together beautifully and it'll work as your guide. All right, so I think panel 1 is ready. Let's make sure we have the C and let's make sure we have the T, and that the C is going center and the T is going trim, all right? So T means to the trim, C means to the center. Now, remember what I told you before, it's much more important that we get the center looking great. So I'm gonna hover this over where the center is, right here, and I just wanna make sure, I'm gonna double check, I'm gonna kind of bend this up, that's gonna line up nice. Looks like it is, so I'm gonna go ahead and put T on first.
on, you. All right, T is in place. And then I'm going to grip the foam in such a way that I'm applying it at a nice gappy distance between all the panels. I'm not just shoving this down. I'm making sure that I'm being mindful that the gap is staying at the same measurement the entire way down. I wish you could see this, but there's a bubble right here where I didn't push it down in the center because I realized I was going to end up being too long. So I put the bottom down first, and now I'm just going to reverse squish my way up. It'll go into place and make it go in that spot. We're just going to make it fit. It didn't want to. It wanted to be too long. But now it fits beautifully. Okay? And like I was talking about earlier, symmetry. All right, we've got a nice straight line here. Now this is where P2 is gonna go. And before I put glue on it, let's make sure I know where T is. Okay, T's up here, that's top. C is the center. Now, it's very important, we were talking about this earlier, that the bottom piece is flush. That's the most important part. And we want that to line up like this. So I'm actually gonna make a little line right here. I'm gonna draw right on the foam and right here. So this bottom piece needs to line up right there, right just through that line. Now, so I'm gonna glue this, I'm gonna start at the bottom. Last time we started at the top. So I'm gonna start at the bottom, we're gonna squish that into place, and once that's in place, then I'll start maneuvering this top line, and I'll squish the foam, and I'll move the foam around, and I'll do all sorts of weird curvy stuff until it lines up really gorgeous with this seam. If you buy this pattern, I explain it all. And you'll see P3, which is right here. Its corner, it's hard to see on this black on black, is touching the corner of C4. So what we need to try to do here is get this corner to come here. It's gonna end here. But how does that happen? This corner to come here if we have this curve. Well, it all just kind of works out. So P1, P3 is gonna come down here. It's gonna end over here all weird. And we're gonna want it to come, see how it's ending? And I have a little, right now it's ending like this. There you go, you can see that. I'll bring my pen over here. And this corner is right here. The little X marks the spot, but we need it right here. So as I'm curving it, I'm gonna work hard to get this to come down here. And then this point here needs to match up with this line right here. So we need this P3 to come in about like this, because we want all these straight lines. All right, so see how this line's continuing straight down to this corner? So we need P3 is gonna come, and we want it to end up in this happy little spot. I'll put a little smiley face. All right, C3 is gonna be all happy and it's gonna end here, and it's gonna end here. In theory, sometimes you gotta squish the foam a little bit. You gotta work it. Until then, we're gonna put P2 on. All right, remember what I said? This one we're gonna start from the center, and I'm gonna put P2 right in the center here, and I'm gonna put a nice pretty gap, a nice tiny gap between that and P2. And I'm gonna put my hand behind here, and we're gonna really squish this on. Just this piece, and here's why. Pay attention if you're making this pattern on your own. This is important. I try to say things like, pay attention, this part's important. Get this bit nice and stuck, okay? Stuck, stuck, stuck. And here's why. Now that that's stuck, look at the gap here. See that big gap? See how we have a pretty tiny, like 1 to 2 millimeter gap over here? We want this over here. But over here, there's a weird curve. So, since the bottom's stuck now, I can manipulate this, and I'm gonna use my hand to pull it up, and I'm gonna push this real close and I'm gonna curve this next to the edge above it. It's more important, I'm sticking this top curve, okay? And I'm not sticking the bottom yet. I'm making sure that top curve is going in. Beautiful. So I pushed my finger along this edge. Remember we had that gap? It's gone. Now I'm gonna push my finger along this edge. So we're stuck, we're stuck, we're stuck, and now this is all just gonna press down smoothly. Okay, and we're gonna let it follow that beautiful bust curve. All right, so P3. And since I know that P3 has to make that pretty little line, same thing as last time, we squish the bottom down first. See, I'm leaving this hanging in the air, just leave it. Get the bottom on, squish it really good. Make sure it adheres. Use your back of your palm, warm it up. The glue likes heat too, just like that. And then it's kind of hanging here. Then we're gonna grab it, we're gonna hold on to it. And coming up along this bust, I'm gonna push it. I'm being real handsy with it. And I'm pushing this really, really close to the other line. That way I get a pretty seam line. There we go. And then that comes up really beautiful and that fits right in at the top. Ta-da! Okay, magic. And then we'll use our hand to just curve this along the bottom. Okay, so we have a nice, beautiful bust curve again. The bust is completely covered now. And now we just need P4 to fit in here. So let's go, let's do it. We will work on P5 because P5 is the one that I wanted to show you. Has these really special kind of cut lines. All right, so P5 has these dash marks on the pattern and these represent razor tool lines. I'll show you guys how to do those. Now P5 is just a guide, so you can make these lines however you want to. And I'm just gonna kind of guess here. Looks like I go from the top edge to about the center. So I'm gonna do and this time you can push real hard with the pen. So it looks like there's a line there. And then there's one that comes off and goes down here. Make them how you want. It's not even like this on the back of her corset. I just did this design myself, you guys. I don't even know if this is how it is in the show. So you don't have to do this. I just did this. Okay, so I marked it with these lines. Now you want to shove your knife out pretty far because I just like to have a little flexibility to it. And you're gonna make sure to lock your knife. You're gonna cut about halfway in and drag the knife all the way through. Don't go all the way through the foam, just a little bit. Halfway in. And now halfway in. There we go. And now what I'll do is I'll heat this. Sorry, my lights flicker when I turn this on. The electrical up here is weird. There. And now we have this pretty little design here that looks nice when you paint it with the green. Right? That's how you do that. Now, it's most important to fit it in this gap. So we want it to come in here. Oh, this is where we're gonna press first. We're gonna anchor it, right? We're gonna anchor this in. Get it in here all nice. There we go. And now that the bottom's anchored, I'm going to start pushing this and pulling this where I want it to go so that I get the gap all right at the top. And this piece is a little too long. That happens sometimes. Don't try this at home. I'm good at this, so I can do it. I'm not gonna cut my hand, I promise. Put a board behind you if you're gonna do this on your own, but I'm good at that, so fine. Mine was slightly long, like 2 millimeters. And then we pushed that in. Oh my God, did we do it? Did we do it? You guys, this was the hardest part. And it looks beautiful. C4 and P4 lining up gorgeous. That's what I'm talking about, you guys. That is what I'm talking about. It's beautiful. All right, now we'll glue on P5, which is one of my favorite panels because it has the pretty green layer. Now we want to do the bottom first on P5 because we want to make sure that it matches up to C4 right here. We're trying to fill this little gap. And remember, all of our focus should be on the center, right? Everything should look nice and geometrical and line up really pretty. Thanks for the potato hype, you guys. Look at all those potatoes. I love it. Okay, there's some Porter here. Uh-oh. Porter. Oh my God, Porter, come on. Porter hair is on everything. Got it. All right, Tato hype. Ooh. Okay, P5. Now, just like last time, squish the bottom on. Get a nice secure point so when you start moving this and pivoting it, it doesn't move. Okay, so this piece is our anchor. We're on. Now I'm gonna hold this and I'm gonna use my fingers and I'm gonna curve this out. I'm peeling it away because what I care about is that the piece that goes next to the piece above it has a nice, pretty gap, right? All those gaps on the corset that make it so Sylvie in between all these panels. Oops, I got a rip in this one. Okay, you get rips sometimes. Watch how I'm gonna fix this. See how that split on my razor mark? Don't worry about it. It'll be really pretty. It'll give us a nice little gap in there, and I kind of freaking love it. Yeah. Okay, so even I get errors. So my P5 here actually kind of ripped right there, and it's gonna look marvelous. Don't worry. You get little gappies, you get little rippies. It's a fun geometrical corset, and this is one somebody paid for, right? And I have a little split, right? It's hard for you guys to see that. I have a little split right here in this panel. It's gonna look great. I'm not even worried because, let me show you what I do with that slit. So, there you go. Yeah, in between those cut marks, I do this like kind of ball chain jewelry that I buy at the jewelry store, at like Hobby Lobby in their jewelry section. But in between these, I put this pretty little gold chain, so it doesn't even matter. Yep, got a little split there, a little splitteroo. Okay, now we get P6. Actually, I kind of like that split so much, I might recreate it on another one. Anchor that. I gotta put my hand under this because I'm getting a weird split I don't want. Okay, this side's a bit long, right? There. And I thought P4 was gonna be the hard one. P6 is kind of being a brat. Get P6 in there. All right, it's in there. Follow it along this curve. Okay. Pretty. All right, so P6 went on nice. Okay, so we made the majority of the corset. So that's all I have time for. P7, sorry, this is the even side. P8 goes here, P10 goes here, and then it ends with a pretty little trim that I add, and then it grommets up the back. yeah, I hope you guys like the video. If you have any questions, just ask me. All that's left to do on this is just these, you know, P7 through P10, really easy, and they don't even have to line up perfect. We did the hard part, okay? This is the hardest part of the corset that you needed to know how to do, right? The next parts, it's just the back. Who cares? You can leave it blank. You can stop right here if you want to. I don't care. But I would definitely encourage, you know, P8 looks like this approximately. And then P10 looks like this approximately. And then right here, if you follow the pattern I gave you, you'll see that there's some decorative trim that I did. You don't have to add this. This was just my personal taste. So here's where I added some pretty little decorative trim, but this is the back and it's not really shown in the show that much. So you can do whatever you want. And then the next thing to remember is that you actually have to cut holes in this to run your straps through. So how you do that is you make your straps, it's included in the pattern. You slit holes in this with your box knife, you shove the straps through, you glue them underneath, and then you glue them up to the back of the corset right here. This is where the straps will go, approximately, right? So they're gonna go in here, glue to the underside of the back to hold them on, come up the top and glue here. You're gonna have to put it on yourself first to make sure you know what length through the straps. And I think that is on page, yeah, this page. And let's see. I made each of my straps 12 inches long to start, okay? Which, just to be safe, and then I cut off the excess after I measured them against my body. So you're gonna put the straps in through the holes in the front and glue them and secure them. But you're not gonna secure them to the back until you put on the whole thing, put the straps over the back, have somebody help you maybe, figure out how long they need to be, put some tape on there or a pin, whatever, and don't glue them till you know it's gonna fit you. So that's the absolute last step, is you take these straps right here, and you're gonna put them in the front first. So you are gonna put them through the hole in the front, you are gonna glue them in place, and then only after that's done on both sides and they are secured, like you know they're not gonna come undone, then you have somebody help measure to where they need to go on your back, and then you glue those down, all right? That's the last and final step, is putting the straps on. Usually with base things, you do something like that in the beginning, like when we were doing our gray base model here, but it's done at the very, very end on this one. So just note that. Anyway, I hope you guys found this tutorial very helpful. This pattern is on Etsy. I have other patterns too, like the Loki crown, Scarlet Witch. I'm putting up Deku's mask today from My Hero Academia. And there's a whole bunch of patterns that are coming to the store. So if you like stuff like this, stay tuned, and I'm trying to make a video for every single pattern that I put up. But thank you so much for those of you who liked the stream. Make sure to comment if you can. It helps a ton. Yeah, so thank you for those of you who like this, and I'll see you guys next time.